Most people think of New York City in terms of Broadway shows, the home of Wall Street, perhaps the New York Yankees. But New York City, greater New York City, has played a broader and deeper role in America, and in fact has played a key role in transforming America. And it's done this by being the leading innovation ecosystem in the country. Here we see the dates from 1800 to 2000. The red here is Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley started in the 1930s. Frederick Terman, the Dean of Engineering at Stanford, was very supportive. Perhaps the most notable company founded at that time was Hewlett-Packard. The green is Route 128 around Boston. And that was started in the early 1950s following World War II. Perhaps the most notable company to be founded then was Digital Equipment Corporation. The blue here represents New York City. New York City has been an innovation ecosystem from at least 1800 on, so at least 200 years or more, has New York been a central innovation system that has transformed America. Now I want to tell you the story of that innovation ecosystem in terms of 36 innovators, 36 people who over the course of those 200 years not only changed New York City, not only changed the Northeast, they played a major role in transforming America. Let's start with ships and railroads. We have John Stevens, DeWitt Clinton, Cornelius Vanderbilt. And what did they do? Okay. Well, John Stevens was famous for his work in steamships and railroads. He also served as the treasurer to George Washington during the Revolutionary War. DeWitt Clinton was the champion of the Erie Canal. Now, the impact of the Erie Canal is absolutely enormous. Before the Revolutionary War, New York was the fourth largest port in the United States, after Boston, Philadelphia, and Charleston. The Erie Canal was started in 1817, opened in 1825, and soon after, New York was by far the largest port on the east coast of the United States. All the grain and other commodities flowed along the Erie Canal, down to the Hudson, to the wharves of New York City, and was shipped all over the world. Peter Cooper was also a steam locomotive innovator and the founder of Cooper Union, which is a preeminent engineering school to this day. One of the only schools where everyone goes on scholarship. And then Cornelius Vanderbilt and the Vanderbilt family is very famous. Vanderbilt is often referred to as the first tycoon. Very busy in shipping and railroads. He started off with a sailboat as a ferry from Staten Island to lower New York, and then he had two ferries, and he ended his career in control of the New York Central Railroad. So these are four people that had an enormous impact on New York and subsequently on the country. Now, clothes and personal care is another interesting set of things, and one of the reasons I included this is because there were two women here that were very innovative very early in the history of the country. John Jacob Astor goes way back. He was born before the Revolutionary War. He was the country's first millionaire, and he was in the fur industry. Beaver hats were very popular then, and he was the leader. C.J. Walker, also known as Madam C.J. Walker, was the first African-American woman millionaire, and her products were beauty products. Another innovator was Hattie Carnegie, and she innovated with the idea of ready-to-wear clothes, that you could go to the store and actually buy clothes in your size and take them home and wear them rather than make them yourself. And she was the originator of the WAC uniform, the Women's Air Corps, Women's Army Corps uniform. She designed that. And then Charles Revson, a bit later, was the founder of Revlon Cosmetics in New York City. So these people played a role in the growth of New York City in a different way than the steamboats and railroads. Then we have pharmaceuticals. Of course, the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, is where the pharmaceutical industry started in the United States and still continues to thrive. Three of the top four pharmaceutical companies are in New York or northern New Jersey. Charles Pfizer founded Pfizer in the mid-1800s. Robert Wood Johnson founded Johnson & Johnson, and George Merck was the founder of Merck. And so these group of people contributed to the growth of that industry and were leaders. And in fact, those companies continue to be leaders and still located in the Northeast. That's not true for all industries. Some industries moved, as we'll talk about. Buildings and builders. Of course, New York City is about buildings, famous buildings. One World Trade Center most recently at 1,776 feet is the tallest building in the United States. And the Empire State Building, of course, is classic, the Chrysler Building. And let's look at some of our builders. John P. Jervis was the designer and builder of the Croton Aqueduct, which is New York City's water supply. New York City has no sources of fresh water itself. So 8 million people depend on fresh water coming down the Croton Aqueduct, which is water taken in Poughkeepsie from the Hudson. And this is the fresh water that serves New York and, of course, is absolutely essential to its existence. John Roebling is the famous designer of the Brooklyn Bridge, which took a long, long time, of course. Elisha Otis was the inventor of elevators. And elevators are crucial to New York and, of course, crucial around the world now, but we wouldn't have these tall buildings we have without both steel, but that's a story of Pittsburgh, and elevators. Willis Carrier is the inventor of modern air conditioning, which has been important to the growth of the country, particularly in the South and Southwest. William Lamb was the architect of the Empire State Building and many other skyscrapers. Robert Moses was a master builder. He brought 2 World's Fairs to the New York and was instrumental in the UN headquarters being located in New York City and was a major political figure, a major force in New York City for many, many years. Oil and refining. This industry started in this area but moved to Oklahoma and Texas later on. But one of the, of course, founding fathers of the oil industry was John D. Rockefeller. He was the first tycoon of the oil industry. He's the one who integrated the companies together in Standard Oil, which was broken up by antitrust early in the 20th century, and partly under the leadership of Teddy Roosevelt, and then broke into several different Standard Oils across the company, of Standard Oil New Jersey, Standard Oil of Indiana, etc. And Carlton Ellis invented the continuous thermal cracking process, which was important to the refineries, many of which were located in New Jersey and still are. But this industry moved away, as did a few others. This industry moved down to Texas, Oklahoma. These companies are now located in places like Houston. But that industry's roots are back here in greater New York. Electricity, computers, and communication. Of course, this has been a big deal for a long, long time and still is a big deal for now and for the future. Thomas Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, invented the electric light bulb and invented the electric lighting industry. He went on to be the co-founder of General Electric, although he didn't play any active role after Thomas Coffin took over. Nikola Tesla, interesting character. Electricity, wireless communications, radio. He played such an enormously creative, innovative role in that space. Thomas J. Watson led the growth of IBM. He was called the world's greatest salesman. He was actually the head of sales at NCR before he joined IBM. And Bell Labs is the only innovator in my list that isn't a person. It's a place. It's been called the Idea Factory. It's where the telephone electronics industry was born, where the transistor was invented, where the communication satellite was invented. In fact, there are so many things at Bell Labs that happened that I can't point out one person as the person. There would be many of them. And that's why Bell Labs has a very special status in this chronicle. It stayed in New York City till I think the 1930s or 40s, starting in 1925. Finance and banking, of course, we think about finance and banking as a crucial part of New York City, and it still is the financial capital of the United States and spars with London to be the financial capital of the world. J.P. Morgan was the first tycoon of the finance industry, and he helped form many, many companies. He formed the U.S. Steel Corporation. He helped form the General Electric and the merging of Edison Electric and Thomson Houston Electric. Alfred Winslow Jones is the father of the hedge fund industry, which of course is still thriving and sometimes controversial in recent times. Walter Wriston was the CEO of Citicorp, who introduced ATMs, CDs, credit cards, and interstate banking. Fisher Black, Myron Scholes, and Thomas Merton came up with the notion of financial option pricing models. In 1973, this model was published in the Journal of Economic Finance. Within a year, it had taken by storm the commodities and futures trading industry. Scholes and Merton received the Nobel Prize in 1997 for this work, and Nobel Prize in Economics. Fisher Black had died, and the prize is not awarded posthumously. But that has had an enormous impact. And of course, Michael Bloomberg, who just finished his 3 terms as mayor of New York, his financial data services has played a major role in the digitization of the whole finance and banking industry. We also have a list of academics and activists, 2 Roosevelts, Meade and Yalow. Teddy Roosevelt, of course, was governor of New York, and he was police commissioner, I think, in New York, went on to be president. He was the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize for the settling of the Japanese-Russian War in 1905, I think it was. Eleanor Roosevelt was author and a civil rights activist. Margaret Mead was an academic anthropologist who just broadened people's views of what culture meant and what society means. And Rosin Yalow, an innovator and Nobel Prize winner in medicine, she's representative of many Nobel Prize winners in Greater New York in medicine, physics, chemistry, and other arenas. Aviation certainly started in North Carolina with the Wright brothers, but the industry grew around New York at first. In fact, around 1920, 1930, most aviation companies were in New York, especially on Long Island. They certainly weren't on the West Coast, where they later migrated. Leroy Grumman was the founder of Grumman Aeronautical Engineering out on Long Island. Frederick Rentschler was the founder of Pratt & Whitney in Hartford. Igor Sikorsky was the inventor of the helicopter, and Sikorsky Aircraft is now part of United Technologies along with Pratt & Whitney. And Juan Trippe is a representative, a founder of Pan American World Airlines. This industry over time moved to California, to warmer climates where weather was more flying friendly. So let's look at the innovators timeline. We can see here that we had few innovators in 1800, and it just continued to grow. It just continued to grow, and our 36 innovators are represented here across these industries. This is Greater New York's contribution to transforming America. These 36 innovators, and of course many others that I would have mentioned had I time, had an enormous impact on the country across an enormous number of industries. So New York is much more than just Broadway, Wall Street, and the Yankees. Let's look more recently at what happened in New York, because New York is reclaiming in many ways its role as an innovation center and innovation ecosystem in the United States. Google signs a deal to buy a Manhattan office building. As I recall, they bought a whole block, a building that fills a whole block for $1.6 million. And last I heard, they have 3,000 people working in that building. And they also have the Cornell new science campus is operating out of that temporarily until their new campus is built on Roosevelt Island. So Google's interest in this is because they wanted to be where young people, young inventors and innovators want to live, and Manhattan is very attractive for that. And then we have Hoboken, looks to be a Silicon Alley breakaway, and from the Wall Street Journal, and new things happening in Hoboken, new creative, inventive things. And then more recently, just months ago, Huffington Post reported on a study that New York remains the world's most competitive city. And in fact, I saw a report just yesterday that New York has been the #1 most competitive city in the world since the 1700s, since 1790. Okay, so this is a really great claim to fame. New York City, besides being a fun place to visit for Broadways and Yankee games and museums, of course, okay, New York City, in its greater surroundings, transformed America. America is a different place. It's an innovative place. It's a competitive place, in part due to the contributions of New York. And this continues. Greater New York accounts for 10% of the GDP of the United States. The corridor from Boston to New York to Philadelphia to Washington accounts for almost a third of the GDP in the United States. So while we talk about innovation in Silicon Valley, and less so in Route 128, we need to keep in mind where innovation really started in this country and where it's still thriving. New York transformed America, and it is continuing to transform America. Thank you.